In case you've not seen the millions of news stories about it, people are big time mad at Joe Rogan and by extension Spotify. And the people who aren't mad at Joe Rogan are mad at the people who are mad at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is obviously a prominent figure in MMA and Jiu-Jitsu, and the Joe Rogan Experience, his podcast, has been a major factor in bringing in more and more people to both sports. But now, one of the most well-known voices and faces of Jiu-Jitsu and the UFC is in hot water, and Joe Rogan has basically divided the nation. I'm going to try and get into this as apolitically as possible, so let's look at the controversy around Joe Rogan and what is going on. So just to catch you up, in case you are not in the loop, Joe Rogan has a podcast. Joe Rogan sold the exclusive rights to that podcast to Spotify to the tune of $100 million. Since the switch to Spotify, Joe has really steered towards the right and embraced a lot of conspiracy theories that even a year ago he'd probably disagree with. Personally, I used to listen to Joe Rogan's show, but not religiously. I basically listened if there was a guest on that I was interested in, but I was never gotta download every episode right away and listen to it immediately kind of guy. There was a study I saw recently about the viewers of the news on the BBC, and it said people who are conservative thought it was too liberal and people who were liberal thought that it was too conservative, and I kind of feel like that's how Joe Rogan's show used to be. If you were a Democrat, you thought Joe was on your side, even if you leaned to the right on some things. And if you were a Republican, you thought the exact opposite. Recently, those on the left have started to feel that Joe is leaning hard into his right-wing audience because that's probably the bigger group of the two, and Spotify paid $100 million for him, so they want to keep that larger market happy. So up to this point, Joe Rogan is just a comedian with a podcast and the most well-known UFC commentator, and he's super rich because he sold his show for a boatload of money. And I gotta say, that's my plan too. Any buyers out there, I am taking offers so long as there's 8 zeros on the end of it. In January, there was an open letter written to Spotify by a group of doctors and medical professionals urging Spotify to address what they viewed as false information on Joe Rogan's podcast about COVID and the COVID vaccines and things that Joe was saying that were not true. Joe has been very skeptical about the COVID vaccines, going so far, I think, to cross into anti-vaxxer territory. In this video, there will be a few clips from his show I'm going to bring up and talk about that have been circulated from Joe's past that have sort of not aged so well. The first one, and I'm not going to play any of the clips because I don't want to get a copyright strike or sued for putting his stuff on my show, but the first video was from the very early days of the pandemic where Joe was talking to a guest about vaccines and said, quote, "I hope this wakes people up to the value of vaccines," end quote. And he goes on to decry people who, quote, "they want it all to be a conspiracy. There's been an amazing medical innovation in human culture, and that's vaccines," end quote. People are pointing to this clip where he's obviously pro-vaccination compared to now where he's questioning vaccinations and seems to be against it. He's gone so far as to insinuate there's microchips in the COVID vaccine. Comparing that clip to now might not be fair. I think he's very anti-vax towards the COVID vaccine specifically now, and maybe not towards all vaccination. But again, if you were pro-vax but now you're not because your audience isn't, that's not the best. Joe Rogan has also been a big proponent of ivermectin as a COVID cure, and he said when he had COVID, he took ivermectin when he was sick and he got better, so he credits it to that. His right-wing fans were very happy when he said that because they have said for a long time, ivermectin, 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 ivermectin. I don't know why people really want ivermectin to be a cure. I know Donald Trump claimed it was, so I don't know if it's just a case of wanting Trump to be right about something. But at the time of me recording this, there is no academic study or medical indication that ivermectin is a cure for COVID. I'm sure the comment section below this video will hard disagree with that. But Joe Rogan took it and he got better. Would he have also gotten better if he didn't take that? If Joe Rogan had eaten a ton of buffalo wings while he was sick and he got better anyway, would we now say that buffalo wings are a good medication against COVID? Could it just be that he took something that had no effect at all and he was going to get better anyway, and that's what happened? I had a stomach ache and I took some Tylenol, even though Tylenol doesn't help with stomach aches, and in a few days my stomach ache was gone, so I guess that means Tylenol does work on stomach aches. I don't think so. Moving on. After this letter from the doctors, musician Neil Young wrote his own open letter to Spotify saying he wanted his music removed from the platform if Spotify wasn't going to address the Joe Rogan misinformation. And more artists started to follow suit and also wanted their music removed from the platform. And this is where the big division started. People were upset that Neil Young was calling for Joe Rogan to be censored. And just to get ahead of what you might already be thinking, the First Amendment protects your free speech from the government imprisoning you for what you say. It does not mean that you can say whatever you want and no one is allowed to react to it, and there should be no consequences to it. Private citizens and businesses choosing not to work with you or listen to you or purchase your products, that is not a violation of your First Amendment rights. The First Amendment protects you from the government, not from people or businesses. You can say whatever you want, but consequences that come from you saying that are not a violation of the First Amendment. If you turn up to work tomorrow and launch into a racist rant, your job will probably fire you. You can say what you want and people can react how they want, but more on racism in a minute. The split over Joe Rogan seemed to fall right on party lines. If you're a Republican, you're more likely to be against the COVID vaccination and you're more likely to be defending Joe Rogan. Democrats seem more pro-vaccine and are more upset about the information Joe is sharing. There was one interview that had people on the left really upset, and the clip went somewhat viral. In the clip, Joe is basically proven wrong about something that he'd been saying for a long time, and he just sort of shrugs it off and says, "I don't believe that's true." Which is sort of the problem. In the face of actual evidence and research, he's just gonna go with what he believes, and millions of people are listening too, and they trust him, so that's where the anger about what he says is coming from. There were a few celebrities and UFC fighters and personalities who were coming to Joe's defense and supporting him against those who were being critical. Some of that support was pulled back when another clip started making the rounds, and it was basically a compilation of all the times over a 10-year period that Joe Rogan was dropping the N-word on his show. The number of times he said the N-word was more than 0, so immediately that's a problem. But again, this is another wrinkle in the story that causes even more division. The people who were supporting him for the most part still are, and they double down on that support and think that because it was in the past, it shouldn't matter what he said. The people who were critical of him cite this as even more reason Spotify should pull the plug on the Joe Rogan experience. If you ask me, I will always go with guy who says the N-word repeatedly isn't a good guy and I don't want to listen to them. The take I haven't seen a single person have is, I think Joe Rogan should be free to say what he wants on his show, even if it's not entirely accurate when it comes to COVID, but I don't want him using racial slurs. It seems to be all or nothing for everyone. If you already said you're supporting him, no matter what comes out after that, you have to stick to your guns, because admitting you changed your opinion based on new information is somehow seen as a defeat or a loss. And if you want Spotify to put a warning on Joe's show about COVID misinformation and you're not getting that, then you start combing through all of his old episodes, trying to find as much controversy as possible to keep the outrage going. There seems to be no nuance. If you want someone held accountable for their actions, it's called cancel culture by the same group of people currently burning books they don't like. This is how this story is going to play out. I'm going to predict the future for you. Spotify isn't going to get rid of Joe Rogan because they paid $100 million for him. The people who support him will extra support him now, and the people who don't like him will stop listening altogether. People will continue to comb through everything he's ever said, and every few days we'll see a new clip about something offensive, and Joe will make another video apologizing for his past words and say again how he's going to learn from this and just wants to have open and honest conversations. We'll repeat this process until people get bored of it and move on to the next story. Should Spotify label the show as containing misinformation? Yeah, I think probably. It's not great that someone with such a huge audience can tell that audience wrong information that will have a direct negative impact on the community and those around them. Should Joe Rogan stop saying the N-word and stop having white supremacists and conspiracy theorists on his show? Yes, he probably should, and I would prefer it if he stopped using racial slurs. I would hope now that he will, since he's been called out for it. But I am curious what you all think. Should Spotify put a warning on Joe's show? Should they suspend it? Should they do nothing? Let me know down in the comments what you think. But if Spotify is looking for someone to replace Joe Rogan's show, this show is available. Just send me a message. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel and smash that thumbs up button. I might suggest one of these very good videos next. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.